Calificas para ser legal, quieres saber, solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.
Why should you do a background search every single time you apply for an immigration benefit? It's simple. You could have an order of arrest. Your name could have been confused. Imagine that Sergio Caprillo with a P instead of Gabrillo with a B was arrested for a crime and deported. Imagine. And your name is Sergio Gabrillo. And someone makes a mistake and puts his information on your contact. So when the FBI pulls your information or when ICE pulls your information, they see an order of deportation that belongs to Sergio Caprillo instead of Sergio Gabrillo. And they try to deport you, to reinstate it. If you don't do anything and you're from Mexico, you're gone within a week. Or from Canada. Other countries, it might take 2 weeks or more. But the point is, they will look to deport you real fast. Had you done a background search, you would have been able to find that. So what am I talking about when I say a background search? So we look for FBI search. That shows me any arrests or detention. Sometimes it shows deportations or ICE arrests. Not always. That's why you have to separately do a FOIA to ICE, Department of Homeland Security, USCIS, Department of State, Customs Border Patrol, EOIR, which is the courts, and OBDIM, which is a clearinghouse that has all your fingerprints from all agencies. So what happens if I was caught in the border in 2003 and I said my name is Jorge Fernandez when it's not, I'm Andrés Mejer, and I was deported, and then I come back another time and I have no problem. If I don't tell my attorney, if I don't tell somebody about that prior order of deportation, people think, oh, well, I used a different name. Immigration's not going to know. Of course they know. They fingerprinted you. That information stays. I want a record of everything. Any arrests, any detention, traffic violations. Look, in New Jersey, DUI is a traffic violation. But for immigration purposes, it's a serious offense. It's a big deal. So we need to know it. We don't want to find out after the fact that there was a problem that we could have fixed. Let me give you an example. We'll talk about Maria. That's not her real name. So last week, I went to her green card interview. She was ultimately approved. Now, she entered the United States with a transit visa. What's that? Well, you don't really see them very often nowadays. But a transit visa is generally someone's given permission to come into the United States for a very short period of time. Hers was 2 days. She was from the Philippines. She was traveling to Los Angeles, and from there, she was going to take a flight to Brazil to get employment training. Now, fast forward 20 years. She's married a U.S. citizen. She has to prove that he's a U.S. citizen. She has to prove that the relationship is legitimate. She also has to prove that she entered legally and what those conditions were. Now, we pulled the information, so we had proof of her entry. But because we saw the category was a transit visa, we also knew, and that's why we communicated with our client in advance and asked, listen, what was the reason why you came into the United States? And she said, I entered the United States in order to travel to Brazil. When did you find out that? Why didn't you leave Brazil? Why didn't you leave the U.S. to go to Brazil? Well, the moment I landed, I got a text message telling me, yeah, there were text messages back then too. I checked. I got a text message telling me that the training was canceled and to go back to the Philippines. So I sat there with nothing, and I decided, well, I'm in the U.S. Let's see what I can make out of it. 20 years later, here she is. So because we requested the documentation, we were able to prove the necessary elements, and because of that, she is now a green card holder. Let me give you another example. Let's talk about George. George is from Costa Rica. His wife's in Puerto Rico and applied for him. They have 3 kids together. He entered the U.S. with a visa as a tourist and overstayed. Now, during the 20 years that he was here, he was arrested for soliciting prostitution. He also had 2 orders of arrest for failure to appear, for driving with a suspended license. Problem is, second conviction, he already been convicted once. Second conviction, automatic jail time. So he got pulled over, didn't show up. Then he got pulled over a second time, paid bail, didn't show up. And I asked him, have you ever been arrested? No, absolutely not. I asked him in front of his wife, which I try not to do now. Didn't occur to me. This is how I learned. He was embarrassed and he never told her about his arrest, particularly soliciting prostitution. Even though it was before he met her, he was embarrassed to tell her. So he didn't. He would rather get detained and possibly deported rather than have his wife learn what he did when he was younger. Now, because we pulled the background search, we found it. And we asked him, he said, listen, do you understand the gravity of this? Had we filed for you, you would have been arrested. You had 2 orders of arrest and a conviction for something that makes you inadmissible. Now, we reopened the conviction. We made that go away. We defended him in both driving with a suspended license cases. He didn't go to jail. We minimized it. We remanded it down. And then today, he's a green card holder. But had we not done the background search, he would have been found inadmissible to the United States. He could have been put in removal proceedings, and his life would have been very different. It is incredibly important that your attorney always do a background search. We don't know what we don't know. I had a client once. She was in removal proceedings. Actually, she started out that she was charged with a DUI here in New Jersey. Now, this is not her real name, but let's say it was Guadalupe Fernandez Hernandez. Problem was, there was an order of arrest for a DUI drug-related in Arizona for a Guadalupe Fernandez Hernandez. And let's say her birthday was March 6th, the one I was my client. Well, in Arizona, the birthday was June 3rd. So the U.S., the way we write our dates is different than most of the rest of the world. We do month, date, year. Most of the rest of the world does it date, month, year. Smallest to greatest. We just confuse everything. So ICE thought they were one and the same. We ordered a copy of the discovery, and in it was a photo of the guy in Arizona charged with the crime. The guy looked nothing like my client. First of all, he was a foot taller and about a good 100 pounds more. Guadalupe can be male or female. Incredibly important to order the documents, request the documents, review the background search, FBI, traffic violations, and each of the immigration agencies. Again, if you're applying for an immigration benefit, let's assume you've had TPS for 10 years. You don't want to put information, so that means at least 5 to 6 times you renewed your TPS. Well, your information might be different then than it is now. You don't want to risk that. We need to review it. Sometimes we need to prove the manner of your entry. Sometimes we need to prove that you're admissible into the United States when they believe that you're not. So I don't know what I don't know, but I don't want to find out once you're in front of an ICE officer. I wouldn't say it's too late, but it takes a tool that we have to fix what could have been a bad situation and make it an easier process, a cheaper process, and a faster process. If we find out you have an order of deportation, I'll give you a perfect example. There was a woman, again, we'll just call her Guadalupe. Her son was in the military. We got her parole in place. He was over 18. When he turned 21, he filed for his mom. She failed to disclose that she was caught at the border and she entered more than once. She told us, and she swore under oath, that she only entered the United States once. Well, it turns out she entered once. Then she left, and she came back. She was caught, gave a fake name, and then came back and wasn't caught. And her entries and exits made her inadmissible. So even though she now had parole in place, which is legal status, and even though her son is a U.S. citizen, she was inadmissible because of those entries, and that she lied to it under oath in front of an immigration officer. Now, she refused, she signed a document saying, I understand there are consequences if I don't do a background search, but I don't want to do a background search. I don't need one. She said, I don't need one. Well, she was wrong. And now she's in removal proceedings. I never would have put her forward for a green card knowing she's inadmissible. I hope I answered all your questions. My name is Mejer. Thank you for joining us on this show.